The Science of Higher Consciousness. Join Todd and his guests weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and learn how to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. Enjoy a survey of inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. It's all right here. Leading authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs with stories and messages to support your well-being, let alone your most evocative dreams.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and that's because I make it that way. When I woke up this morning, I decided it was going to be groovy, and the rest of the day is groovy. And I'll tell you, this morning was pretty challenging, but I always went back thinking it was groovy, and things seemed to work out and in my favor. That's the cool part. Welcome to Life Mastery Radio, the talk show that brings you great thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. As always, I think now that the show has started and I know it's going to be a breeze, I need to get myself centered and situated a little bit. So let's just take a minute and think about what it is that you connect to. What is it that you get power from? It might be God, it might be Allah, the tree, the dude. It could be anything that you focus on and get power from. So think about that just for a minute and take in a deep breath. And then let's just let that breath out with a big ah, and let your essence just flow up through your heart center, right up and out your speaker box and out into the universe. Let that universe know that you're connected, or you want to be connected, or that you are connected. Let's do that one more time. This time, I want you to think about those dreams, visions, and goals. We're going to be talking about that today, so I really want you to anchor those ones that you've only got 7/8 of the way through, and then you've dropped it like a hot potato. Let's just think about those for a minute. Take in a deep breath. And let that breath out with another big ah. And let those dreams, visions, and goals flow right out your speaker box, out into the universe. And for sure, now you allow the universe the opportunity to make those come true for you. How am I doing, Jackie? I didn't quite get it this morning. I think
quite get it.
I think we need to have our opening tune a little bit longer so that I can get the Facebook watch party started before the show starts. So it's kind of, I'm just kidding. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. My technical issues are not that well either. I mean, I shared it, but I don't think it's a watch party for some reason this morning. Didn't get that chance. So I'm with you there. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm trying to share. I don't see it. Yeah.
Like I know it's like multitasking, and they tell us that that's actually not good anymore, right?
Maybe I'll. Webinar is now streaming on Facebook. I see the message in Zoom, so now we should be able to share it. So things are a little up in the air. I know people are trying to figure out where their kids are going to school, and so you're not seeing a whole lot of activity right now, are you?
Not right now. I think, parents tell me they want it and their kids want it. They just can't commit to it. Right. So that's the challenge right now. But I understand, because who wants their kids on their computer 6 hours a day in school and then, another hour of a class or something. So I understand it. We're just living in strange times, Yeah. In fact, it's quite counterintuitive in the first place. My goal was to get kids off of devices, right? I recognize the addiction that those devices are for kids, and it doesn't build their self-esteem. In fact, it undermines their self-esteem. And so I've always preached, get off the dang devices, find something else to do and engage and socialize with people in different ways. And so now that's the only way we can engage and socialize. And it's tough to try to change my mindset in that regard. So hopefully things are going to return to some sort of normal soon. I'm actually excited for the debate tonight.
Yeah, me too.
It will be interesting to
I think a
hear,
lot of people are.
being a communications teacher, I love the debate idea. So we'll see. I'll be there taking some notes. Declare a winner.
Yay. Maybe I'll just give a shout out to our engineer. I don't see it on our Facebook page yet, Mr. Engineer Cameron, owner of Contact Talk Radio.
Are you listening, Cameron?
Are you listening to us? Yeah, that's a good way to find out. I want to remind the listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net. You can go there and click on today's show page, and any links that we talk about, you will be able to find there. And while you're there checking out our great write-up for today's show, all of our past shows are there. All of the blog posts that Jackie creates about our shows are there. Some really cool stuff. But while you're there, you could sign up for our newsletter. Our newsletter is right there on the right-hand side. Put your email in. That's all we use that email for, and you will be kept up to date. All things Life Mastery Radio, who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and of course, Jackie's blog post about the show. It's really cool. And you could take another step, and while you're there, check out this really groovy book that Todd wrote. Well, actually, my girlfriend helped me write. Coach Debbie. So go check out Coach Debbie. Google it. You'll find her. But you can click.
Did she do 3 of the keys and you do the other 3?
No, I did all the keys. She just helped me glue it all together. And yeah, she did a great job. It made for a wonderful book, and you will love it. And after you read it and love it, go to Amazon and leave me some feedback about what you thought. There's some great feedback there. So if you want to read the feedback before it, you could check that out. Okay. Did we forget anything, Jackie? Or
Well, signing up for the newsletter is really easy if they want to take out the smartphone that's probably always on you. And if you text Life Mastery Radio to 22828, and then just type in Life Mastery Radio to that text and send it off. And then you'll get a notification to put in your email address, and then you'll be already subscribed to the newsletter. It's just that easy. And then, as Todd said, we do not use it for anything other than just providing information about our upcoming and past shows for you. So, and we'd love your feedback. If there's something else you want us to include in our newsletter, let us know. We'd be happy to do that.
I see the watch party has started, but I don't see it on Life Mastery Radio's site. So maybe we could. Do you see it yet, Jack?
Nope. I do not.
I don't know how to share it.
Maybe we go to the Contact Talk Radio page.
That's where I'm at, and I don't know how to share it.
Yeah.
Okay, Bridget. Well, we're going to bring you on, and we'll just keep an eye out when we can share that watch party. If not, we'll be able to share it later on this afternoon. Are you ready, Bridget? Our guest today is Bridgit Dengel Gaspard, an LCSW, and she is the author of a wonderful book called The Final Eighth. And she is the founder of the New York Voice Dialogue Institute, and we're going to be learning more about that voice dialogue. She is a former performer who earned a master's degree from Columbia University and teaches at numerous professional settings, including the Omega Institute. She lives in New York City, and she maintains a thriving private practice there. You can find her website link on our show page today at www.lifemasteryradio.net. Okay, so The Final Eighth, what is it about? I'm going to give you a brief description, and that way we don't have to blaze a trail during the show today, and we can jump right into it. The Final Eighth guides readers through the process of identifying and speaking with their inner selves, such as the inner critic, the perfectionist, artist, and risk taker, to figure out which one of them supports their goal and which are impeding it. Bridget helps readers to spot and discard the negative beliefs like I'm worthless or I'm not good enough that are holding them back. The book also helps readers discover empowering parts of themselves who can offer the guidance they need, shift their perspective, reveal their buried strengths, and get them moving again towards success and fulfillment. How'd I do, Bridget?
Beautifully.
It's always nice to have some really good write-ups to introduce our guests. So I think before we get started, I want to know what did you perform in? All we get is you're a performer. What was your performance?
It was a long time ago, and I performed a lot of live stuff mostly. So I did stand-up comedy in New York City, and wrote and performed in different kind of sketch comedy things. I lampooned the retail world and fashion, and loved playing with opposites. And so most of it did off-Broadway and alternative theater, and did a little bit of small parts on soap operas and that kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
When we still had soap operas in the old
Yes.
days, when the whole world stopped, when was it Luke and Laura got married a million
Right.
years ago?
And
That
who was going to
goes
have
way-
amnesia this week?
Oh yes, I forgot about the fun of amnesia. I think I'm going to have amnesia sometime next week, just because.
That goes way back. I watched that when I was overseas in Okinawa, Japan.
Wow.
That's how far back that goes. That was a long time ago. Okay, so then moving forward, what got you into understanding what makes us tick?
So I think that's a beautiful question. What makes us tick? I think I've always wondered. I think I've always had a sense that what you see is not all that you get. I feel I've understood that since my single digits. Like there's just always more to the story, and I always had curiosity. And so when I was performing, I was just always available to find new techniques for creativity. So I found improv, for example, and I love improv, and I did that for years. And it was during that time that I read about voice dialogue, and it electrified me. So I hunted down the founders who created it, the doctors Hal and Sidra Stone. And by that I meant I found their 1-800 number. And so they became my mentors, and the technique really fit because I was a performer and an improviser. So the idea is our healthy personality consists of many selves, and we go to a different part of the room to become one self versus another. So I loved it because I could do, if I was working on a character or just comedy, playing different parts, and also getting people's perspectives, especially if they weren't my perspective. It was such a good way to get into like the evil revenge self. And then if you really enter that, you're like, oh yeah, I can think of endless supplies of punishing ideas. It was a portal into different imaginations. But as I got trained in voice dialogue, I saw healing happen with such swiftness. It would take my breath away over and over. Like that became a new normal. And that's when really my interest began to shift toward the healing and where creativity fits in. And so I went and got my master's at Columbia, became a psychotherapist, and got clinical training, which I'm really grateful for, but have come full circle now to really embrace the creative ways of healing. And voice dialogue is instrumental and really one of my fundamental tools.
So I think you described voice dialogue. It was introduced to you by one of your mentors. So is that how that went? You were introduced to voice dialogue and then you got curious and decided to go get a degree to explore it some more, really?
Yes. So basically it was so electrifying to me that I read about it. I didn't meet them. Even reading about it in an unrelated book, so to speak, Synchronicity would disagree. I'm like, this sounds amazing. I got to find out who created it. So I hunted them down because every fiber of my being, except maybe a few fibers, we'll get to that. But, and so I just really entered it as a performer and also healing myself. The book was Healing the Shame That Binds You by John Bradshaw, which is a classic and an incredible book I still recommend to this day for people who are dealing with shame. But it was in that book, he listed all of these wonderful modalities that were not on your average AMA website. And so
I never thought I'd be giving up acting. It changed my life, but I didn't know it at the time. But then the healing of it and watching people get so empowered when they realized they were so much more than they thought they were.
No.
It just was extraordinary. And it kind of built charisma and optimism almost as a side effect. Like people didn't have to aim for those. When you really are in relationship to the different parts of yourself, it's like a side effect.
So, okay, maybe I'm missing something. So vocal dialogue, is that what you're calling it? Is it voice dialogue? Is it just talking to yourself? And if that's the case, can you demonstrate how that's different than saying, "God, you're really stupid," and talking to yourself in that negative way? So what is it? What is voice dialogue? How is that different than the voice that's always in our head, either telling us to do something or not to do something, or that we can't possibly do something?
So, and voice can be confusing because to this day, I still get people thinking they're going to get some singing lessons. So
right.
I'm aware of that. So, but it is a technique, and you bring up a wonderful point. No, voice dialogue does not have to just be words, just using your voice, because as you both know, communication is some small amount is verbal. And so with voice dialogue, which is another reason I think I loved it so much as a performer, and I'll show you now a little bit for those that are on video, but you move over to a different section. Now, in person, when I would facilitate people, you could move to any part of the room, but since we're all on Zoom, usually it's just moving over. And that does a couple things. So here, I'm Bridgit in the middle. I go to a self. Most of us think of our primary selves as who we are. We don't really realize there's these other parts, and that this is healthy. So you go to move over, and now I would say, literally, I would embody another self. So do you want to give me a self you want me to embody? And I'll do it just briefly to give you an example.
Do I have particular choices, or can I just throw something out at you?
Throw something out.
Okay, your childlike love of apple pie. I don't know.
Ah, that's beautiful. Now, of course, you're making me hungry, but that's a separate one. So we would break it down to the stem cell. So a childlike self. And so if I'm in my childlike self, and I'm just showing it's a demonstration, but most childlike selves, and in the book, we help readers, where does it live in your body? How does it talk? So you notice I'm kind of coming down because most childlike selves don't sit up straight necessarily. And there's wounded children, but there's also magical children that are related to your essence. Like, oh, I love apple pie, and I love this, and I love jumping. And so when you talk to that childlike self, you don't use big adult language. So you would talk as if you were talking to a 4 or 5-year-old, which is how I feel. Then after you come back to center, because the idea is always that you gain your muscle of being able to access your different parts. And then you can list the gifts of that part, the wisdom of that part, also the sting. I used to have a client who, for whatever reason, would bring her 8-year-old acting out boy to her big negotiating meetings and really not understand why she was not succeeding in her business. And we had to say, your 8-year-old boy is yours. People, your board of directors don't want to see your 8-year-old boy at the meeting. So it's large like that, but then you can also use it really specifically. Like, which parts of yourself do you need to bring to this meeting? And if you have scared parts, which of course you do, that's absolutely appropriate. How do you take care of them better so they're not at the meeting with the adults? You don't bring your 8-year-old to a big meeting. You say, wow, I've got to get a babysitter for the 8-year-old so I can be my full CEO or whatever is needed in the moment. Does that answer?
It does. And it reminds me of a woman, a good friend of mine, who had multiple personalities, in that she could handle just about any situation because one of her personalities would come out, I think is the terminology we used back then, and run the show at that point. And so people didn't know that was what her problem was necessarily, but she was so liked because she could handle anything, because there was always a personality that could come out and handle it. So I know this is different than that, what you're talking about, but it sounds like we might draw on it in the same way, just with a controlled method, rather than having a personality come forward and take control of you.
Exactly.
You're actually looking at the different parts of yourself, the strengths you have in different areas, and saying, okay, that strength I need at this particular time. So that's what I'm going to try to incorporate into my true self. Am I off base or am I there?
No, not at all. That's beautifully put. And it sounds like your friend was amazing, because humans are extraordinarily resilient. But and I'm not sure if this was your friend, but the dissociative identity disorder is the name of people who have trauma-related illness. And I want to be really clear also, so thanks for bringing that up. This is the healthy model. If anyone has the dissociative identity disorder, they should definitely get psychiatric help, and because there is help. But the big difference is also they often don't know when they've left and gone into a different self. With voice dialogue, you know what you're doing. You never lose the sense of your larger self. And then, yes, you gain control to say, okay, we have this to do, and I want these parts. I'm going to bring out the alter ego superpowers that I need. And it's wonderful. So that's exactly right. And so this, and some selves are so beloved in the community. It sounds like your friends, like, we can do this, had great fans because we like people who can be helpful that way. And it's genuine. Their helpfulness is genuine.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too is because I was in therapy with her, we were survivors of childhood abuse. As you know, it was a traumatic situation that took her to that point. And we then, this group of women that were with her, were able to see her integrate these personalities through hypnosis. And so she was able to, it was so cool, Bridgit, because in hypnosis, she could explain to us what she was seeing. And she would describe how each of these personalities, some of them infants, so they weren't even verbal, some of them really dangerous, murderous type characters. But what she would do a little bit at a time in different sessions is she would envision each of these people, hug them, and thank them for the benefit they added to her ability to cope with this traumatic experience with her. And then after she thanked them, then she said, I don't need you any longer. And they were then integrated into her. And it sounds like this might be something similar to what you're asking us to do, is that we look at all of our different parts and hold that gratitude for the talents and skills we have in these different personality ideals, but finding ways to integrate them all into ourselves so that we have that powerful feeling all the time that we can handle what we need to, right?
Oh, that's incredible. What an experience you had to.
It was amazing.
Yes, but that's exactly right. And we need to thank those parts. They got us out alive.
Yeah.
And the other thing we start to realize is the noble purpose of all these parts, regardless of their function and their dysfunction. Their noble purpose is protection, period. And so that's exactly right. And then you get to upgrade them. No, thank you. I don't need this negativity or whatever it is right now, but I appreciate it that you helped me. And then I can still take the gift of it. So if I need to be boundaries, like have my lioness level boundary making, good. You want to have access to that when you need it. If you're having a difficulty being in an intimate relationship, maybe that lion that says stay away needs to be adjusted, and what other cells can come out. So the other thing is it's all related to what you want and when you want. There's no toggle switch, like this is good, this is bad, or this is always, this is never. That's just not part of this way of looking at things. And I love that too.
Yeah. Cool.
Sorry,
Todd, I've been monopolizing the conversation here.
I am just like blown away. I'm like, wow, here I am, 60 years old. And no matter how old you are, you can never know it all. And I thought, I've never even considered, Bridgit, what you were describing in your story, I got the thought that we aren't in control. So your book's about an awareness, right? Bringing
Yes.
about an awareness. And most of us go through life and aren't aware of these different people coming to the party at different times. And your book helps bring an awareness to where we get to choose. So I guess where I was heading is there really isn't a choice of who shows up without the awareness. Is that the deal?
Exactly. Sometimes I like to say when I teach voice dialogue, oh, it's very boring. You're just aiming for more conscious choice. That's it. That's the superarching objective. But yes, you either react and suddenly someone who, like, if you think about a boss that made you somehow upset, or legitimately was a bully and triggered your victim selves, like you feel like you have no power. You just completely react. Those parts jump out, but with awareness, you can bring in other parts. That's exactly right.
It's like, oh, wait a minute. So, I also own a business and dealing with customers, and Marianne Williamson taught me something a very long time ago, that there's only two ways people communicate. It's either love or a call for love. Oh. And I started to practice that in my business when, a customer would get upset or an employee would get upset. Oh, they're just calling for love. I'll just give them. It was amazing how that could diffuse a situation. It was just like the tool of all tools to have in your master kit. And
that's beautiful.
I'm gathering that this is kind of the same way, right? Oh, the bully's showing up. Let's just throttle him back a little bit and put in the nice guy, maybe, kind of, sort of.
If you have control, but you're exactly right. But let's say the bully is coming at you. You can decide different things that you can do. And it's awareness. So if you say, wow, that bully is coming at me and it's a call for love, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to go into victim to some other way. Sometimes love might be you being completely assertive and saying, that's very painful when you treat me that way. Yeah. Letting the bully know the effect he's having or she's having. So what love looks like is different depending on the situation, as opposed to either saying, oh yeah, well, I'm going to uber bully your bully, and then no one wins. Or the opposite, you get into victim mode and you feel terrible and nothing's changed. But I love that. And yes, voice dialogue would look at it as being aware of their vulnerability and what is the best thing that you can think of in the moment to do with that.
I want to just take a minute and remind our listeners that you are tuned into Life Mastery Radio. You can go to our website at www.lifemasteryradio.net. Our guest today has written an amazing book called The Final Eighth. And do you have a copy of the book handy?
Yes. Why? Yes,
it is. Usually I preset that up. There's The Final Eighth. That's her book. And we are having a great discussion about it. So one of the things that I came up with in the book that really hit me was a quote. And I think this applies to our aspirations and our goals. And you said this, and it just kind of bounced around in my head for a little while. It was, not all of me wants the same thing. Can you drill down into that a little bit? And then let's apply what we've just learned in the first half of the show with our aspirations and our dreams, visions, and goals.
So just give you a little touch right now. So basically, we think we want our goal with every fiber of our being, and we work for it. And then we're mysteriously stuck in front of the finish line. And so that means there are parts of you that are against the goal. They are stopping it, and they are wise. And that's the thing, is that you want to find out what wisdom is it that they're carrying, that they're stopping the goal. And yes, not all of you wants what you think you want, or else you would just do the goal.
Right, or complete it, or do those next steps.
Right.
Huh.
I'm scanning through this book, and I'm like, how did she get inside my head? How does she know? How does she know how I view things? I have many projects. You can see some of them around me. And I just reach a certain point where it's like, I was thinking about this, Bridget, and I convinced myself somehow that I need more knowledge, right? or I need to know more stuff before I can do the next step, or I need to get this before I can do it. And things come to a screeching halt, and then they could sit for a while and I could completely forget about them.
Exactly. And so a few things also that could be is that so it gets confusing because maybe there's a grain of truth. Maybe you do need to get a little research or education, but that doesn't mean endless. And so then you are in a mirage goal, right? When you want more education. Oh, yes. But that mirage, of course, is a mirage. So we never arrive. And then continuing to be in a mirage goal tricks you into thinking you're working on your goal. But really, you're just stuck in your mirage. And then time goes by, and like you said, you forget all about it because there's an exciting new project, and first eighths are sometimes a whole lot more exciting than final eighths because you can be addicted to the possibility. Oh my gosh, the euphoria of possibility. And that's another type of mirage goal.
I have to assume that I'm not the only one.
So how is voice dialogue related to the title of your book? What is the final eighth?
So the final eighth is failing literally inside of victory. And so the idea is that voice dialogue is the method where you can talk to the different selves that are for your goal, as well as the different selves that are against your goal, and get to know, well, which selves are for the goal and which selves aren't. And I think that fundamentally boils down to somewhere you have been given permission, either internally and or externally, to operate in those 7/8. But it's somehow forbidden territory to actually succeed. And it's a success issue, which does not get a lot of respect. So people don't even realize they have it. Like the violins come out, oh, are you having a success issue? But in fact, a lot of people are afraid of success. And so in terms of whoever it is and their particular selves, voice dialogue is a way to find out what's happening and then to honor the wisdom and the concerns of those selves. Because guess what? Success can be quite scary and nerve-wracking. And that's why I have a chapter called Practice Safe Success. Because how many times have we read that classic story of the celebrity who had everything and then ODs and or dies, or at least ODs regularly once a year? I mean, it's really sad, but it's because they can't handle the success, and it's a real thing.
So are there 8 general parts of us then?
And I think we have inner selves plasticity, like we have brain cell plasticity. So the 8 really refers to, it honestly came to me like from within. It feels like it was channeled because I watched my clients getting 7/8 of the way there. And I think it's more about the distance, that you're so close and you're suddenly stalled. And it's obviously I suffer from this myself. So no, Todd, you're not the only one, which is why I read the book, because I walked away from I sadly walked away from opportunities that were really wonderful. And it was hard to write and reveal that in my book, but it's what led me more and more into the healing path and voice dialogue and the power of understanding the selves and what was going on when I myself stalled in front of the finish line. And by the way, more than once, just so you know.
Wow.
You know, I have to think too, I don't know, my mind's just going a little nutso here, but you know, we get these aspirations, and I really like the way you describe it as a mirage goal, right? Mirage goal. And we get 7/8 of the way there and then realize this is going to change my life.
Yes.
Do I want that? Do I really not want the life I'm living today and want this life that's going to totally change things? And I can say for myself, that would put the brakes. Okay, we've reached the end of this road.
Yes. And in terms of the final 8th process, and if you don't have to answer, but then what would be a few gifts of that part of you that literally says brakes?
You know what I find in the gift when I reach that point is the journey, the lessons learned, and the information that I've gained. I don't know.
Sometimes, no, that's terrific. And sometimes there's also what I call body learning. In other words, I'm making it up. It doesn't necessarily mean it's your break self, but we all have one. Maybe it's about, my God, you're so exhausted now. What are you, crazy? that self just can't imagine having one more thing to do. And one of the genuine wisdoms of that, besides being accurate, and it always feels nice to be right, is you get ill, you get run down, and then you get the illnesses that are around, or wounded or injured. And so that breaks self in a way, is giving you a hint. Like, if you don't stop and listen to what I want to communicate, I'm going to keep upping my message until you hear me. And so I think that's another reason people are scared of their big selves, like anger or like the breaks or resistance. And I like to say it's because you haven't been listening. They don't need to yell so loud if you start to listen. So then people also start to be less afraid of their anger, for example, because they listen earlier, and the anger isn't then about to, throw a Molotov cocktail, because you listened earlier and you're like, all right. And you own that you're angry about X or Y or Z, especially for people who anger is a very frightening part of themselves.
In your book, you mention a double bind. What is a double bind? Is that something we find ourselves in?
Yes. So a double bind is a very painful psychological quandary. Technically, it's the classic when in Sophie's Choice, when she had to decide which kid to give to certain death to the soldier. That's a double bind. It's a fake choice. It doesn't really exist. And both choices are horribly painful. And so the double bind about the selves that are like 7/8 there and there for the goal, versus the other side, the ones that for whatever reason aren't, then these selves, which usually they got us 7/8 the way there, and they usually have the schedule, they push harder. And so this part goes, no problem. I'm going to push harder back. And then you're just stuck. And people can be here for a decade. I mean, it's very painful. And the other thing is that these selves that are against the goal are often attached to core negative beliefs from early childhood. Even having done a lot of work, secretly, you've got a few selves that believe painful beliefs like, I'm not good enough, things don't work out. And then to have the double bind of like all these selves that believe in you and work hard. And then these cells go, but wait, if it works out, that doesn't compute. It's not then. And there's a distorted loyalty. These cells are still loyal. They believe the early messages because they loved the early messengers. And so some of that work is grief work, where you take those parts and say, yes, I love you. It's not true that you were worthless. It's true you might have been told that. It's true you made decisions as if that were true and it was false. So certainly regret might come into this picture. But that's the double bind. And so having that realization and talking to these different cells really loosens that double bind, because you're not just doubling down. For every doubling down here, they'll double down here. And it's just endless. And there's no winning this. And that's what the voice dialogue helps release it.
Fascinating. That is,
this is a little bit related to what Dr. Siegel was talking about last week, or when he wrote in his first book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, is that it's that situation, maybe that double bind we get in, that then starts causing physical problems and health situations that aren't good for us, right? Because our body has been saying no, it's been having an argument with each different parts, right? And then our physical body has to get in there and start shouting in some regard, saying, I need you to pay attention to this kind of thing.
And eventually you do. I was thinking the same thing when I was listening to your interview with Dr. Siegel. The other thing he did that voice dialogue inherently does, when he would when he'd be operating on someone under anesthesia, but talk to them and do beautiful music, he was validating all of those parts. And the other thing voice dialogue by definition is, it's validating. You tell a part, I want to hear what you have to say, and I'm not going to correct, I'm not going to edit, I'm just going to listen, be curious. And there's such healing power in that. And this idea, which started with your meditation at the beginning, Todd, like we can connect to these higher selves. And somehow Dr. Siegel was so brilliant. He was doing it in arenas that wasn't allowed. He brought permission in, and then he healed so many people, both literally as well as externally out through his books.
Well, yeah, people would color in his coloring books, and then he would review them, and based on what colors they used to color certain parts, he knew what was. I was like,
Yeah.
That's wow. It's just crazy. It's trailblazing. Totally.
He is a trailblazer.
Yeah.
And that's like an exercise you can do with, you say yourself, then you also could take your magical child and say, and just let it draw, not draw like about the magical child, although there's something to that, but as the magical child or as the rageful one, or he was amazing and that he could read it. The idea that the purple meant that this was a prediction of death. And so he's like, we're not doing the operation. I mean, talk about being literate in much more than language and letters.
It's intuitive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
does your book lead someone through exercises to discover these things about themselves? Do you teach us how to do voice dialogue through your book?
Yes, absolutely. From beginning to end, it really is a step-by-step guide, hand holding and suggestions, because I believe in accessible wellness. And this book really says, okay, let me start. And yeah, here's how to do it, the questions and exercises, so that people can get empowered through knowing themselves and then making the choice, including letting go of that goal. I have a whole chapter because I realized I was writing this book for all the type A personalities. And I thought, well, that's not holistic. Let me give a chapter to the parts that really are telling you, give it up, not because you're a loser and a quitter, which is what you'll be told, but because it doesn't fit anymore, or it's boring to you now, because it really is boring to you now, not because you're in reaction to it. Right. And so how to let go of something, especially if you get pressure from your group, like, oh, but you've been at it so long. They mean well. So it's also about how to let go, and then how to still use the method to support yourself in your new goal, which is much more resonant with who you are today.
Interesting.
Yeah, that would be key. So the book just got released. It was your release party, I think, was last Friday. That would have been
25th of September.
The 25th of September. So it's been out there a little bit. So give us a little teaser, or tell us a little bit about what you're hearing. What kind of feedback are you getting back?
That it's fun. A lot of people, they understandably are struggling, and that's why they pick up this book. And then some of these exercises, it's not that they're not serious, but it's serious fun. So I'm getting a lot of, this is so creative. And the other one is that it's like I'm looking at things upside down. I never thought about this angle. And that warms my heart. That's what I want. I don't have an agenda for people, but I want them to know there's a whole upside down view, and it's yours for the looking and for the wisdom to be gathered.
Yeah, to be able to make better choices or choose to take it or leave it. Yeah, I think that's really cool. You know, there's one section that I read in the book. Sorry, Jack, I didn't mean to
step. Okay.
And I think this is important, though, because you lay it out. Hey, if you're working with this book and you're getting burnt out, or you're getting mental drain, and you call out to stop, but you give people a tool, and I think you called it militant self-care. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yes, I am a 5-star general of militant self-care. Yes, because it's a real transformational journey. And so it's to honor that it's not necessarily easy, especially hidden parts that we've been avoiding all of our lives. And so militant self-care could mean anything from jump into that bubble bath and cancel all your appointments that evening, to calling up the doctor and making the appointment, so that something that is caring for your whole self. And what research is finding, if you do that, it actually it's a cognitive expander. Doing these self-care actions literally makes you think better, and also improves your mood. So for a long time, it's like, oh, airy fairy, or somehow dismissive, like you're being self-indulgent. And I'm like, do you mean self-full? As opposed to self-indulgent,
in the woo-woo woods, right? In the woo-wood.
Exactly, the woo-wood. Yeah, the woo-woods. But in fact, those that need it, science is showing that there is a literal physiological improvement on so many scales, meaning mood and cognitively, And when you're doing the final aids process, you are teaching yourself how to think differently. You're going to be questioning some of your lifelong paradigms. And not that you were wrong, but it's like, wow, either it was true, but it doesn't have to remain true. Or you have that massive aha, or a few of them, like, oh, I've been playing the role of martyr this whole time. And then even just that realization, like, let me see how many things I'm doing that I am doing from the martyr and not because I want to. And so some of that that's where the startlingly quick changes happen. It's like, oh, or you make the conscious choice. Okay, I know I'm doing it for my martyr, but I really believe in this higher ethic that I'm supporting. And so you do it. Again, my book doesn't say how to pick. It's just saying, please be aware that there's much more than whatever your reactionary, habitual responses are with your normal selves, whatever your primary selves are.
Normal? My normal self.
What's that?
So now it sounds like a lot of people have to get into crisis mode for some reason before they begin to at least search for more of an awareness of these things. So we've been living in a crisis for 6 months. Have you seen an increase of people shutting down or being willing to actually do a little introspection? What have you seen in the last 6 months?
I would say it's a combo. Certainly, everybody has higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of uncertainty. And I remind them that's appropriate. Like, that is what's going on. And so I'll have a lot of clients who really are building their dreams. They are not getting knocked off of their dreams and empowering themselves. And many of them have said, wow, this has been a gift in that I've had time to go within. You know, we the commuting time, for example, that was just erased off of people's schedules. When that time is used well, it's very empowering. And I think a lot of people are really figuring out, well, what didn't I like before COVID? And so what can be a much better normal for me when we shift however things are unfolding, and that that it's possible to do. And I also, people have struggled with having family members get COVID, and I do not want to minimize what happens when a family is struck with someone who gets ill and even dies. And just with, like all illnesses, sometimes that terrible situation really ignites resilient parts of ourselves that can do part in the family. That's like, all right, I'll deal with the hospital, you deal with this, that can just say, we've got to work together on this. And also to empower parts for following their conscience, whatever that is, to get active in what they think a better society looks like. So with voice dialogue, we honor the terrified parts and the crisis parts, but also then say, okay, so what else is there? Because there's always more. Not because those parts are bad, but what else is here?
It really applies to a lot of different things. It's not, I think your book is geared toward dreams, visions, and goals, or things we aspire to be or do. But there's also relationships, right? I mean, because a lot of what I'm seeing in COVID, especially with people that are around me, they're questioning whether this person they just spent the last 8 months cooped up with is somebody they want to spend with. Right?
True.
And
I mean,
so
yeah, go ahead.
in the beginning of that relationship, there was all of this wonder and amazement, and now comes the realization, well, maybe that's not just it.
So one of the reasons I love voice dialogue in this method is we take life on life's terms, and it's not it's unconscious, but when we meet someone, certain of ourselves are just ignited, and vice versa. And then that makes our love chemicals of attachment go. So all of this is healthy attachment. And what happens is we fall in love, and those parts just feel amazing. And then life happens because we cannot maintain this, and we're not designed to. Even if the baby is born, then there's new hormones that come out. So evolutionarily. So then these other parts come out. And usually within a partnership, your hidden selves are primary in the other person. So you're seeing in the other person what you don't like in yourself, and vice versa. So if you use voice dialogue as a teaching tool, you may or may not end up breaking up, but that person is showing you your medicine. And I have an exercise in the book. If you take a teeny weeny itty bitty, AKA homeopathic dose of, let's say, aggressor, I don't know why that one came up, or neat freak, and just take a teeny bit for yourself, whatever it is you don't like in your partner, what would you do differently in the next day or two?
Right.
Almost everyone could say, oh, I would do X. They know immediately. And that helps take the pressure off the relationship's problematic aspects.
Interesting.
Man, lady, you're just all over it, aren't you?
I can see I'm blowing your mind.
I think, oh my goodness, it looks like we just have 4 minutes left. Is there a last parting shot that you have for us, Bridgit? And I for sure want to make sure you're open to coming on the show again, because I think there's a lot more we could talk about.
Me and all my selves would love to be back with you and Jackie. So there's that. My inner grammatician doesn't know if I actually should have said myself and I, so just saying that. I just would, if you be curious, if for listeners, especially if you're not doing well, no, don't deny that, but be curious. What else is there? Yes, I'm not feeling well, but I know something else is there. And if you have the book, it's like it helps you find those parts in you. And the curiosity is like an elixir anyway, just being curious. And I even have in my book, which is a little taboo, a blameography. I give you permission to just list who hurt you, why you hate them, and you can just blame, because we're not allowed to blame. So do a blameography so you get it out of your system. And usually you find some other cells are like, oh, that felt good. Now let's get to work here.
Is this something, do you ever work with kids or young people?
I do. I think you have to, there's wonderful things you could do with, depends how young they are, you'd have to adjust it. But young adults I work with a lot, and they respond really well, especially, in the mid-20s. By that, young adults. Teens also, like, who do I want to be? It's right. Society has given them permission to try out different selves, and their hormones make sure that they do. Yeah. So yeah. It's really empowering. Again, not that you're bad or good. It's more like, oh, my inner actor out just came out. It helps you have more compassion for the parts of you that maybe aren't even doing the right things.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Bridgit, because our youth today, they're exposed to Google. They can find out anything. So why even go and try and discover things, right? And that leads them to the conclusion, well, everything's done. Why do I want to aspire to do something different? I can just, it's crazy. I think it's a dynamic world we're changing in. And I think you have an awesome book. I think I want to encourage our readers to go and check it out. I'm going to be checking it out even more. And your website is?
Final8th.com.
Final 8th.
And I'm all over social media. You can just Google me or the Final 8th, and please feel free to contact me, anybody out there.
Amazing. We want to keep up to date with you, so we're definitely going to have you back on the show. Jackie, did you come away with any insight? Did you?
Yeah, my next summit, Bridget's going to be out on one of my presenters.
Yes.
Definitely. Because there's a lot here that I think.
So Bridget, did you have fun?
Oh, I had so much fun.
Jackie,
and I feel like I want to play with the little beings behind you. It's that much fun.
Oh, those are collectibles. You don't play with them.
Oh, there's a self
that
protect. Exactly. I saw that possessive self come out. No boundary.
Oh, that's about all we have for today. I hope you had fun, because I just confirmed that our guest had fun, and I know for sure Jackie and I had a blast. We always do every Tuesday. Check us out. Tell your friends about us. And lastly, here's the deal. I would like for you to check out Bridgit's book, because it is really cool, and let us know what you think. And please make it a great day. because it is all about a choice. Bye-bye for now.